and welcome to another edition of Barça Fan Voice. Today, just for a bit of fun, we're going to be looking back at the last 30 years and the worst players who played for our wonderful club. Starting with the goalkeepers. Now, I admit I thought Victor Bayer was going to be my worst goalkeeper of the last 30 years, but having looked back at it, there were plenty of goalkeepers between Andoni Zubizarreta and Victor Valdés who really weren't up to the standard. We had Richard Dutriel, we had the unfortunate Robert Enke, who only played one game in the league for us, and was responsible for a very humiliating defeat in the Copa del Rey against Novelda. We had Rustu, who couldn't speak Spanish and didn't play because of that. Victor Bayer was very unfortunate. There were two games that stuck out. One, a 5-4 win against Atletico de Madrid, where he was responsible for 3 of the Atletico de Madrid goals, and a 4-0 defeat at home to Dynamo Kiev in the Champions League. But for me, the worst goalkeeper goes to Julian Lopetegui, signed in 1994 from Logroñés to replace Zubizarreta. Lopetegui was a fine goalkeeper for Logroñés, was very good at playing behind a packed defence, very quick reflexes, but at Barça he was exposed behind an advanced defence. His timing was poor when he tried to run out of the area to cover to cover the advanced defence. The one game that stuck out in particular, a Super Cup game against Zaragoza, it was his home debut. He conceded 5 goals, and to some degree you could say he was at fault with all of them. The worst was the 5th, which was a free kick floated over the wall. Lopetegui dived early, left a hand flapping in the air that touched the ball, but it was a weak hand and the ball dropped over the line. And that was it. He lost his place to Carlos Busquets and only played in 5 league games over the next couple of seasons before eventually being sold. So it's Lopetegui in goal. Moving on to right back, it was a little bit easier to choose here. Over the years we've had some pretty good right backs, and Chapi Ferrer. Reisiger wasn't too bad, and of course the wonderful Dani Alves. The other players who've filled in at right back have often been youngsters coming through, like we've seen Sergio Roberto recently. We had Gabri played at right back, Olaguer, of course Carlos Puyol filled in there quite a lot in his early days. And the other signings we've had there, Belletti, Zambrotta, haven't been great but haven't been terrible either. The one player who sticks out for me, signed in 2014 for €4 million from Sao Paulo, Douglas Pereira. Now, if anyone who saw his debut at Malaga, it was a 0-0 draw, so defensively perhaps he wasn't at fault, but going forward he looked so out of place. He didn't understand what Barca were trying to do, all over the place in his positional sense going forward. Then he rarely featured after that. He was at the club for a couple of seasons. He played 3 times in the league, 5 times in the Copa del Rey, didn't score any goals. Gave 1 assist in the Copa del Rey for a goal for Adriano, but he just didn't look like a Barca footballer, and it was very difficult to understand why he was bought at all in the first place. So it's Douglas at right back. Moving on to centre backs now. Now there's a few candidates here. We had players like Martin Cáceres, who never made the grade at the club. Frederic Dehu, who's very disappointing. Older fans might remember Pablo Alfaro, signed from Tenerife by Cruyff in 1992, didn't make the grade. And of course more recently we had Yerry Mina, who might have been good at scoring goals at corners for Colombia in the World Cup, but really didn't look a Barca defender. But the players I've chosen for the centre-back positions are Philippe Cristenbal, signed from Monaco in 2001 for €6.5 million. He played 47 times for the club over 2 seasons, coinciding with one of the worst periods at the club under Gaspar, and never did anything to impress. The other position is for Dimitro Chigrinsky, signed for €25 million from Shakhtar Donetsk in 2009. Now, Chigrinsky had been a star of the Shakhtar side, and Guardiola wanted him because of his ball distribution skills. However, he didn't seem to have noticed that Chigrinsky had an extreme lack of speed. He was very slow, and he was exposed again. Balls behind our defence, he was very slow to turn and get back. In his 1 season at the club, he only played 14 times and never looked the part, and went back to Shakhtar Donetsk the next season. Moving on to left back, there's one candidate who stands out, even though our recent signing with Junior Firpo made me doubt, but the position has to go to Winston Bogarde. He was a big, strong, athletic player. We might have expected a lot from him. His touch wasn't that bad, but his head seemed to be somewhere else, and this coincided with a time at the club where there were a lot of Dutch players who didn't seem particularly attached to the club and didn't really feel their colours. Bogarde just got worse as time went on. and he eventually moved on to Chelsea, where he was even worse than he was for us. So there's your defence for you. Moving on to midfield, we've got a long list of candidates here. We could have gone for Andre Gomes, recently departed, and Arda Turan, another recent flop for us. Philip Coutinho could be in there. And going back further, we've got Jari Litmanen, Robert Prosinecki, Gerard Lopez. Who remembers Riquelme? A great player, but dreadful for us. But the three who made it into our worst 11 of the last 30 years. First, we go for Fabio Rochenbach, an incredible footballer. He would run around at 100 miles an hour with his head down. It was like a headless chicken. Now, I'm not a big fan of Alex Vidal, but he's a much better player than Rochenbach. Similar style for that never say die running around, but Rochenbach really had no direction to him whatsoever. Alongside Rochenbach, I'm going to go for Emmanuel Petit, signed from Arsenal in the year 2000 for 14 million euros. This was a World Cup winner. He'd scored a goal in the World Cup final. But for us, I don't know, he claimed he was played out of position. In his autobiography, he blamed Lorenzo Ferrer for not even knowing where he played. He was only with us for one season, played 23 games, scored one goal. Every time I saw his name on the team sheet, it made me cringe. He just really didn't fit in. And the other midfield place goes to another player signed from Arsenal. In fact, we could have had an entire midfield made up from players signed from Arsenal. We could have had Alex Sung, we could have had Mark Overmars in there. But I'm going for Alexander Hleb, signed in 2008 by Guardiola for just under 12 million euros. Hleb was quite adept at dribbling the ball around the field, but he didn't really know when to go forward, where the goal was, how to shoot, which he never did, and he ended up playing 36 games for us, scoring no goals. So there's our midfield for you, Rochenbach, Petit and Hleb. Now moving on to the forwards, it would have been very easy to go straight for two mad signings made by Cruyff back in the day, when he signed Cordiev and Escaich from Espanyol on free transfers, but they didn't cost any money. I think we should look at the players who we wasted money on. On the right side, again, quite a few candidates. We could have gone for Dragan Sidic, we could have gone for Quaresma, we could have gone for Santi Esquero, even Dembele. But in the end, I'm going for a signing made in 2001. Giovanni, signed from Cruzeiro for 20 million euros. Came in for us, played 2 seasons. Again, coinciding with that dreadful time at the club. Scored 1 goal in 26 games. Mainly played in the first season and then only 5 games in his second season at the club before eventually being sold on to Benfica. To show his level, his last team in Europe was Hull City, where he played from 2008 to 2010. Then for the number 9, it's difficult to find a number 9 who could of course go for Mayo Codro, who only scored 9 goals in 32 games in the one season he played for us, after scoring 48 goals in his previous 2 seasons at Real Sociedad. However, Codro was probably affected by the situation in his native Bosnia, which was at war at the time, and he did score 2 goals in the Clásico against Real Madrid, so we're going to spare him the place. Instead, I'm going to give it to Alfonso Perez, signed in 2000. He was intended to compete with Patrick Kluivert and Dani Garcia for the 2 striking positions under Seré Ferrer, but whether it was injuries, lack of form, maybe it's because he was a Real Madrid fan at heart, but he only played 21 games for us and only scored 2 goals in that time. Scored 3 goals in the Copa del Rey, but compared to his form at Betis, where he scored 57 goals in 152 games, he scored 11 goals in 38 games for Spain as well, but for Barça, he just didn't find his level. And the final place in the team has to go to Emmanuel Amunike. I'd like to give it to Mark Overmars, but Amunike, who scored the winning goal in an Olympic final in 1996, was signed. He only played 19 games in 4 seasons for us, scoring 1 goal, which was a very poor return for a player of his quality. So there we have it. Lopetegui in goal. A back 4 of Douglas, Kristenball, Chigrinsky and Bochade. Midfield 3, Rochenbach, Hleb and Petit. And a forward 3 of Giovanni, Alfonso and Amunike. I wonder how they'd do if they had to play together. Well, what do you think? I'm sure I've missed some people out. I've forgotten Christophe Dugarry, that's for a start. But if you've got any players I've forgotten, please put a comment down below. Or send me your 11 worst players that you think is the worst team that Barça have ever had. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I could do with all the help I can get. Okay, thanks for that. I'll be back on Wednesday with some more. Until then, Biscuit Barça. Bye for now.